Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, a Christmas Day Heist. A grande whole milk latte and all the money in the cash register, Bernie said to the cashier while pointing the gun at the barista. Or the barista dies. People usually value other people's lives more than their own, or at least they should. The age 20s. Something cashier's face was twitching. It was clear he had never been in a robbery before. Calgary is a safe city, or at least it was before the people from Toronto started showing up. Is this for real? Are you actually robbing the store? The cashier said. Does this gun look real to you? Bernie allowed the cashier to have a good look at the cold, hard steel of the Glock G19. The cashier raised his hands. It felt good to watch other people do as they were told for a change. Behind Bernie, a woman's voice said, "That's not a good decision." "And why not?" Bernie sneered. "Full fat milk. You should choose skim or soy." Bernie glanced around and saw a young woman with lightly bleached hair, that new style that gives women a zombie-like appearance. She was wearing a t-shirt with a cartoon figure on it. Definitely from Toronto, the weird ones are. Or Vancouver. "I didn't ask your opinion." The cashier behind the register said, "The grande full-fat latte comes to $7.99. Bernie pulled out a credit card, an action born out of habit, then put it back away. The robbery was not going the right way at all. "You are going to give me at least $500, Bernie demanded to the cashier. The girl with the bleached hair began talking over her shoulder again. "I'd like a half skinny flat white with a shot of hazelnut using my Starbucks bonus points." Firing a bullet into the ceiling would have made this robbery easier. Calgary police interview of suspect Bernie Schultz by Officer Ringenberg. Or, in your own words, explain to me what happened earlier today. BS. I usually drink coffee at Tim Hortons, so I thought it would be better to rob a Starbucks. Calgary is a big city, but this is Canada. People know each other. At Tim Hortons, no one ever gives feedback on what drink I'm ordering. Who let all the Starbucks open in Calgary anyway? It must have been those arseholes from Toronto. The same Torontonian arseholes who voted for Trudeau. How did I get here? One day, I was the site administrator of the biggest oil project in Alberta. The next day, global warming and electric vehicles means I've lost my job. Then I was dragged from my home by government thugs. They wore different uniforms than you, but were in uniform from my home. My brother, who helped me pack my things, said I needed to get used to change. "This is 2023, he said. "One door closes and another door opens," he says. My brother has a big mouth. At my new place in the sticks close to the forest, the fires worry me. I watch the news on CBC every night and have chats with my neighbor Ted about the fires. They didn't happen before. Not before Trudeau took over. Anyways, Ted says we need to fight the system. He said if we could get $500 together, we can drive to the Yukon and live in an abandoned cabin over the summer and get away from the lunatics in Calgary. Or, what's Ted's last name? BS. Bennett. 2 N's and 2 T's. So back to the story. Since Trudeau took over, everything is about pointing out other people's mistakes. People are always telling me what words I'm not supposed to say anymore. Well, Thank God some things stay the same. Once a week, me and Ted walked to the Tim Hortons nearby. Even Timmy's didn't have a Christmas tree this year. But that's not going to stop Bernie from having the spirit of Christmas. At that other place, people just wouldn't listen to a woman with a gun. I wanted to shoot a bullet into the ceiling to stop them all yammering. And then you all came in. O.R. Thank you, Bernie. That's all we need today. We're still collecting evidence. Before I start shooting, there's something I'd like to say, Bernie announced. I hope you have a Merry Christmas. She turned from the cashier to the barista. And you too. Merry Christmas. Ma'am, here's your latte, and have a Merry Christmas, the cashier said. Then he added, I don't usually say that, and looked at the other people listening in the store. They had stopped talking to each other and were paying attention closely, in the way every high school teacher dreams of. Bernie gave everyone present a stern look, one that showed she meant business. Her arm was getting tired. She forgot how heavy guns were. The cashier had been holding his hands up for quite a while and was getting tired too. Sorry, ma'am. I can't give you all the money in the cash register, he said slowly and calmly. Because this is a cashless store. His eyeballs moved back and forth between Bernie and the sign next to the cash register. It said, This is a cashless store. Bernie groaned. It's because of those people from Toronto again. I'm from Calgary, the cashier explained. Bernie didn't know how to respond to that. Doesn't your son come in here? The cashier asked. Bernie realized at that moment she should have worn a disguise. Outside, flashing red lights appeared. Bernie watched with concern as police cars filled the parking lot. The cashier, in a kind voice, the tone a person might use to give a suggestion to a friend that the color of his sweater doesn't match his pants, said, They might shoot you if you're holding that gun. It doesn't matter what age you are. As Bernie thought about putting the gun down, one of the police looked into the window and then walked straight in. Bernie has thought they might surround the building and start a kidnapping negotiation. She had planned to ask for a taxi to the Yukon to let everyone go. Bernie Schultz? The policeman asked. Who's asking? Let's take you back to Sage Hill, he said and walked straight toward her. Bernie lowered the gun that lacked bullets. Her gig was up. The police knew retirees in Calgary wouldn't give up their guns, but the retirement homes had taken away their bullets. The cashier cleared his throat. Just for my Instagram account. Why were you trying to rob the store? Bernie wanted to quote Willie Sutton, because that's where all the money is. But it didn't seem to fit this situation anymore. She mulled it over. The police weren't in a rush. She told the cashier, For once I just wanted to be in control of my own life. The cashier thought about it, then said, The office workers that come into our store and put in complicated orders, I think have the same reason. When he noticed how many people were watching him, he added, Not that that stereotype is representative of all people who work in offices. In the language of her own generation, Bernie explained that she also didn't mean any offense to anyone by her words and actions that day. Sorry, she said. She left the store with the police, one holding her shoulder in case she tripped on the front step, a ghost's testimony. After the living and the dead decided to merge worlds, the Supreme Court was flooded with appeals. With coexist being a hot topic in the first half of the 21st century, most people thought it would be a great idea to create a union between the two worlds. They thought they'd get their loved ones back. They thought they'd get access to generational wisdom from their deceased elders back, and perhaps some old family recipes could finally resurface. People could only think of the missing pieces in their lives that they wanted to finally have sewn up with the help of a familiar, ghostly face around. It was an oversight, to say the least, that with ghosts being almost as accessible as the living, there would now be witnesses for crimes where before there had been none. It actually caused a lot of chaos across the criminal justice system, especially for police officers who had tampered with evidence to shut a case quickly, for gang members who'd offed witnesses to shut their mouths. And it was a goddamn headache for judges who had to reopen every murder case from the last several decades that now suddenly had a victim who could tell their side of the story. But for Jeremy Strout, it was a lifeline. He'd been sitting on death row for 15 years after being convicted of 4 heinous murders, his wife and 3 children. At the time of his conviction, there'd been no one there to defend him, just whispers from neighbors who'd said they'd heard him yelling in his house hours before the bodies were discovered. It didn't help that he was the one who'd called 911 and then was found at the scene of the crime covered in their blood. It didn't help that he'd sought out anger management before in his past. Rumors swam through town like a broken dam, neighbors speculating that he hadn't wanted their 3rd child. That little Harley Sue was a mistake Mrs. Strout made Jeremy keep, and that he'd finally snapped under the pressure of 3 small children and a wife whose fertility had betrayed him. Jeremy had always denied the rumors, claiming that he loved his family. Sure, they had their problems, and he never denied the hardship of not only providing for 3 children under 5, but living under the same roof as them. Nevertheless, he remained adamant in his defense. He would never harm them. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough. Statistically, said the prosecutor, people are more likely to be killed by their spouse than any other person in the world. And of course, Mr. Strout could not leave his children to live after killing Mrs. Strout, because who would take care of the children while he was at work? And if he had not done it, then why so much blood, not only on his clothes, but in his fingernails, wedged between eyebrow hairs and in the wrinkles of his temples? And the even bigger question, if Mr. Strout had not murdered his family, then who did? There had never been another suspect. The police never really took the time to consider one, their minds made up before they could produce an alternative. It really was easier just to blame the husband. What jury wouldn't go for that? Today, our jury gets to hear a new side to the story. Jeremy's defense attorney told the courtroom at his appeal hearing, nearly 2 decades after his family's murders. From Mrs. Strout's perspective, Mr. Alcott enticed the crowd with a smile that said he had a secret, one he was eager to share. Attorneys could be a bit performative in their speeches, and Mr. Alcott was no less confident. The union between the dead and the living truly did save some attorneys' careers, as it had not always been every day that they could produce eyewitness testimony that could turn a case on its heel. Some started getting big heads about it, as if they had more power than the judges, and Mr. Alcott's once regular-shaped head was slowly growing in size. Jeremy, who'd known him since his family's gruesome deaths, knew that Mr. Alcott came from a humble and passionate place. He just wanted to help people. And more than anything on this day, he wanted to help Jeremy. The only problem with ghosts as witnesses was time. The worlds were combined, yes, ghosts were all around. But time for the living and time for the dead, they existed on 2 separate lines, intersecting at points that were not always convenient. Ghosts floated from here to there to here, teleporting across space and time. And their biggest adjustment to being reunited with the living was adhering to the old 3rd-dimensional clock. You could not simply tell a ghost to show up in court at 9 a.m. and expect them to find where that time existed for them. The closest thing living humans had to relate this ghostly state of nonlinear existence was to elderly people with dementia. They hopped from place to place, time to time, without any real sense of how they got there. Ghost therapists, a new occupation created by the psychologists, blended a team of living and dead to try to help condition ghosts into grasping the concept of earthly time. But like any therapy, it was not an immediate remedy. Realistically, Mr. Alcott could only hope that Mrs. Strout would appear in court, but there was no way to be certain she would find her way there at the right time and place of the court hearing. Yet still, he spoke as if there were not a single doubt in his mind. Today, we will get to hear an eyewitness account of the events that took place on October 26, 2023, from one of the victims' perspectives. And how grateful are we that it is now possible. Mr. Alcott turned to face Jeremy Strout, seated at the defense table, shackled at his wrists and ankles, both sets of chains locked in place by a hook on the tabletop and the floor. Jeremy was trembling, just as nervous as he was during his first trial, which certainly had not helped his case. He tapped his feet anxiously, and Mr. Alcott took his seat beside him. "Don't you worry, Jeremy. I've spoken to Mrs. Strout, and I know she wants to be here. She feels just awful that all of this has fallen on you. I have no doubt she will find her way here, even with those kids of yours keeping her busy. Who'd have thought dead kids could still be such a handful?" Ah! Jeremy didn't laugh, so Mr. Alcott cleared his throat. "She's got a wonderful therapist, Jeremy. They've been working really hard on timeliness so she can be here for you today. He's the best therapist around. He worked so hard when he was alive it nearly killed him. Ha! Ha! But really, it was the alcohol that did it." Despite Mr. Alcott's poor humor, his assurances did give Jeremy hope. After all, that was all he had left. The courtroom remained mostly silent as the hours carried on, everyone waiting, now accustomed to the concept of ghostly testimonies, and also of their inability to make prompt appearances. If people had thought court cases dragged on before, waiting on a dead person to show up had made the old ways seem swift. Every so often, as the clock ticked, a ghost would find themselves in the pews alongside the other patient attendees, causing a stir in the crowd. An elderly man piped up around the second long hour, reminiscing. "I remember when they built this courthouse in 1949. Apparently, he had been a little boy with a dream of becoming the president one day. At the time, fascinated by the building's exterior columns and interior mahogany. On the third hour, a child ghostling chased a ball around the courtroom, giggling about how his dad used to work upstairs. On the fourth hour, a former janitor peeked his head in to see if the garbage needed to be changed. It was the fifth hour when the judge, who had spent nearly all of the hours engrossed in a book, announced that if Mrs. Strout did not find her way here in 10 minutes, her testimony would have to be rescheduled and the court would be adjourned. Jeremy's foot resumed its tapping. Mr. Alcott nudged him, winking. "She'll be here." Jeremy's hope was nearly run dry when the clock struck 5 hours and 11 minutes since the court hearing was set to start. The banging from the judge's gavel was still resounding, while a symphony of people gathering their things and sighing at the wasted day trickled across the room. All of it was at just the perfect volume for Mrs. Strout's meager voice to almost be missed. Almost. "Hello?" she said. "Hello? Did I make it on time?" The noise in the room was like a faucet sputtering out until it finally stilled. Everyone froze in their tracks and turned towards the voice to find an equally meager and transparent figure seated at the witness stand. When Jeremy laid eyes on her, she looked as beautiful as the day he married her. Not appearing in the form in which one died was a feature of ghosthood that all appreciated. "Senora," Jeremy whispered, At her name, the ghost frantically searched for its source. When she landed on Jeremy, relief softened and warmed her face. Jeremy. She smiled. Then, as if her reason for being here suddenly rushed to her mind, she jerked towards the judge, who was still frozen in his half-standing, half-seated stance, considering if he should allow this hearing to take place. "Your Honor, you have to set him free. He's innocent. Please," she pleads. "Senora, where are the kids?" Jeremy asked worriedly. His ghastly wife faced him again. "They're fine, dear. Well, they're dead, but they're fine. They're at the park, playing." Jeremy thought of little Harley Sue, not even 2 when she passed, off at the park playing without an adult. Senora read his expression. "I figure not much else can happen to them now." She shrugged, forcing a laugh. Mr. Alcott, who was already up on his feet, cleared his throat and approached the judge's bench, nodding a hello to Mrs. Strout. "Your Honor, would you please allow Mrs. Strout to give her testimony? We've waited all this time, and if we prolong it any further, we cannot guarantee her appearance again." The judge was tired and hungry and ready to sit on his couch and kick his feet up, but he was also reasonable. He surrendered a sigh. All right, Mr. Alcott," court reinstated. He tapped his gavel, and the jurors all groaned as they found their seats again. "Make it quick, Mrs. Strout. We had all day, but that day is nearly gone." Mr. Alcott turned to Jeremy, giving him 2 thumbs up. Jeremy released all of the air he was holding on to. Mrs. Strout nodded and straightened in her seat, running her hands across her lap as if to flatten her dress. Out of habit, most ghosts seemed to retain this gesture. Mrs. Strout inhaled before she spoke. "The day I died, there was a harvest moon on the rise. The children were loud, and the house was a mess, and the fridge was nearly empty. I hadn't gotten to laundry in over a week. It was a pretty typical day in our house, actually," Mrs. Strout joked. Only a few in the room offered an empathetic laugh. The judge was less patient. "Mrs. Strout, while I have sympathy for your tragic death and the death of your 3 children, you are here to tell us if it was that man, Mr. Jeremy Strout, who did it. We do not need a bedtime story." Jeremy flinched at another man telling his wife what to do. "Let her speak." The judge shot him a daring gaze. Mr. Alcott squeezed his shoulder. Senora thanked him with her eyes, but behind them was a painful secret rising to the surface. "Of course, Your Honor. I know I've already taken up a lot of your time," she said, addressing the whole courtroom full of people. Then she looked down at her lap, twiddling her fingers. "The truth is, my children and I were killed by one of their parents." A gasp echoed across the walls of the room, and an uproar of whispers scattered like static. Mr. Alcott and Jeremy shared a confused stare. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! Order!" Everyone started to hush, but it wasn't until Senora shouted that silence fully resumed. "But it wasn't Jeremy!" Senora was crying now, looking directly at her husband. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. Jeremy's foot stopped bouncing. His mind was trying to solve an impossible puzzle. All these years, people had assumed he had murdered his entire family. But the truth was, he honestly didn't know what had happened to them. Just like he'd told the police, he'd come home from a long day at work and walked into the most horrific and life-shattering scene he'd ever witnessed. No one believed him. Senora's sobs were the only sound in the courtroom as everyone patiently waited for her to collect herself. Thankfully, Kleenex had developed a ghost-friendly facial tissue, and one of the guards brought it over to her. She wiped her eyes and spoke sternly, as if she had not just been wailing with abandon. "Your Honor, You need to release my husband from prison, right now." "What are you saying, Senora?" Jeremy whispered. The next words that Jeremy's wife spoke were undeniably the most important of his entire life. More life-altering than the ones spoken by the police who arrested him and the judge who convicted him. Senora's words freed Jeremy Strout from a prison death sentence and cleared his name of all criminal charges. But in the same instance, her words shackled him all over again, leaving him forever haunted by the truth. Neptune's lair. When I met her, word on the street was that Esme was beyond help. Her friends called her crazy and borderline. By the religiously inclined of former times, she might have been thought of as demon-possessed. During drunken fits, she'd get into fistfights or threaten to throw herself from freeway overpasses. She walked a thin line and repeatedly upset rumors of her demise, taking immense pride in being what she called stronger than dirt. She had a breathalyzer in her car. 2 years ago, she'd overturned her Hyundai in an incident where she was discovered to be 3 times over the legal blood alcohol limit. She made financial ends meet by renting her body out for clinical trials, hoping the entire time that she'd taken placebos instead of the experimental medications upstart pharmaceutical companies produced for everything from bipolar disorder to angina. There were times she'd come home from one of these lab rat money runs with side effects, bad ones, but they'd eventually subside and she'd make jokes about how at least she hadn't become the victim of sudden death syndrome. That Esme, tougher than dirt, as resilient as rubber. Even though she smoked all my stuff, drank all my wine, and frequently resorted to flings with Little Dicky, a former boyfriend I suspected provided her with something I couldn't, I felt something for her. I made what I called minimum rage, flipping beef patties and assembling burgers at a late-night boardwalk diner called Cracker Jack's. Before the week was up, with Esme's and my drug debts, I'd be begging tourists for change to buy spare cigarettes. For a while, we resided in a tent on the rooftop of a building where Desmond Tutu Phillips, a friend since freshman year in high school, was the apartment building manager. Desmond risked losing his job for giving Esme and me a key to the restricted access rooftop. Despite our unconventional ways, he had the patience of Jesus with us. Even so, I'd still piss over the side of the building, and Esme would relieve herself where and whenever convenient. When we got too grungy, we'd take care of our hygiene needs at the showers meant for beachgoers. At night, we read copiously by battery-operated lantern light and shared a predilection for somber stuff. Our favorites were Rimbaud, Baudelaire, Camus, and Hamid. When we tired of the Cracker Jack's grub I'd bring to our squatter pad, we'd get high and end up eating red velvet cake and whatever else she'd send me to shoplift from the supermarket a 10-minute walk away. On the stroll back home, paranoid from the nearly toxic cosmic kush, and with my backpack stuffed with our pilfered renegade sustenance, I'd be startled by the sounds of passing cars, thinking a cop was sooner or later bound to stop me for stealing Esme's and my daily booze and bread. Although I feared the cops, I always suspected my weed paranoia was caused by a much deeper-seated guilty conscience. I should have confronted Little Dicky a long time ago. Also, I had left my mother's side when I felt her senescence was becoming a burden. There's no way I had the resolve or character to be the caregiver for an aging parent. When I confessed these thoughts to Esme, she'd dismiss my concerns and say I needed to stop overthinking things. I remember once when Esme and I were walking home from a party, she said, pointing to a couple of graffiti-spraying gangbangers, "Javier, I'm scared. That guy with the Supreme hoodie has a gun." He pointed it at me, never sure whether she really meant such things, but fueled by drug and alcohol-induced courage, I confronted the guy. "Hey man, I said to the one Esme had referred to. You know what I am? A janky spick boy with a death wish, he answered with a sneer. No, I'm a delinquent out to get delinquents. What you gonna do with that heater? Turns out he didn't have a gun, just another can of neon spray paint, but he wasn't overly enthused by the tete-to-tete I had with him. He and his friend didn't kick my ass, but Mr. Supreme sprayed me in the eyes with the paint. Esme started mouthing off to him, but even though I was partially blinded, I pulled her away for fear that we'd both get battered. Those are the kind of stupid things I'd do for Esme, but the important thing to me was she would call me things like her ballsy little soldier and lavish me with affection after I'd go out on a limb for her. I put blood, sweat, and tears into the relationship, and rarely did I think it wasn't worth it. The end of our star-crossed romance began after Esme came back from the free clinic where Dr. For the People, Randolph Hamilton, told her she had cervical cancer. After she heard the diagnosis, Esme became determined to go out with a bang. She began visiting Little Dicky more frequently. She demanded I steal tequila instead of wine from the supermarket, and when she drank the Patron I'd bring to our squatter's abode. Her temper became hair-trigger sensitive. The only respite I'd get from her gloomy rages would come when I'd invite her to the beach when the moon was full. Apparently, Little Dicky had something against doing things that smacked of romance or chivalry with her. Moonlit midnight swims in the Pacific were one such pastime Dicky didn't seem to have a taste for. On the nights Esme and I'd sink our toes into the wet sand while the moon's phantasmagorical light reflected onto the dark side of the earth, she'd momentarily forget about her terminal diagnosis. She'd also forget about her mortal condition whenever we'd watch movies at the rooftop squat. I don't know if it's the case with most people, but when I'm high and watching a good flick, I'll hear messages in the movie's dialogue. I'll also interpret anything someone says out loud about the film to have personal relevance. I've heard these phenomena are called thoughts of reference by those in the field of mental health. Schizophrenics have them, but I guess when I'm high, I might get a little schizophrenic. Makes me wonder why I keep smoking the cosmic kush. But one night, while viewing Scarface with Esme for the 5th or 6th time, she said something along the lines of, "God, it's just so good. I can't get enough of it." To my cognitively distorting and high mind, Esme wasn't talking about the film's extended denouement where Tony Montana gets shot by his sister, then exterminates a battalion of rival narco-gangster cockroaches before he ends up floating face down, bloodied and bullet-riddled in his "The World Is Yours" Miami drug boss mansion. No, Esme wasn't talking about the film. My mind interpreted her statement as referring to her relationship with Little Dicky. Before Montana gets the shotgun blast in the back that finally does him in, Esme exclaimed, "Jesus, we all know he's doomed." When she said that, I couldn't help but believe that she was referring to our friend and benefactor, Desmond. If for whatever reason Desmond was doomed, Esme and I would soon be off the rooftop and into the street, nowhere for a loving couple to be, especially when one in the pair has terminal cancer. I didn't know whether Esme's words would attract fate, but I knew that her despair was making her behave more erratically. She started to break down in tears when she'd think of having to be holed up in a hospital or hospice, awaiting the inevitable during the last stages of her disease. That night after the movie, and while coming down off the perception-altering shrubbery, I decided to take a course of action. The next morning, I bought 2 tabs of acid off Tripster Todd, a boardwalk dealer of LSD, and various other hallucinogens. I told Esme that we'd go for a swim at the beach after I got off my shift at midnight. We walked to the beach at close to 2 a.m. On the way there, I picked a purple flower whose name I didn't know from a garden in front of a well-tended house. As we walked, I put the flower in Esme's hair. The moonless night sky's inkiness was blinding. The tide was low, and we had to walk a good distance to the water. There was no one on that portion of the beach except for us. As she dipped down into the waters ahead of me, Esme expressed her gratefulness for not having any open wounds, given that a recent outbreak of carnivorous bacteria made coastal immersions risky for bathers thusly exposed. Before going waist-deep into the water, I surreptitiously took the 2 tabs of LSD I'd bought from Tripster. After letting the acid dissolve, I gave Esme a prolonged French kiss. In little time, my vision, swayed by the acid, started playing tricks on me. Although there was virtually no light on the beach, my eyes summoned a warm, radiant glow in the heavens above. "Jav, I feel funny," said Esme. I splashed her with water and told her that she was okay, that everything was going to be okay. I knew what I had to do. I played out a dialogue in my mind where I said, "You need to confess," and asked her why she was always going to see little Dickie. In my mind, she responded, "My lips are sealed." "That's exactly what they aren't," my courageous imagination told her. We were up to our solar plexuses in the ocean. I took hold of her shoulders and dunked her beneath. She came up, laughed, then, giddy from the acid, childishly said, "Jav, I'm going to die." I said, "No, you're not, love. You're going to live forever. Remember, Esmeralda Lucero is tougher than dirt." I repeated the dunking gesture, this time less playfully, taking a fraction of a second longer than Esme deemed comfortable for her to be under the tide. The 3rd time I dunked her was even more forceful. She struggled in my grip under the water. I crossed a threshold. She freed herself from my hold, surfaced, then said, "What do you think you're doing?" More in the form of an exclamation than a question. I smiled. The white of my teeth infuriated Esme more. "It's not funny, you hijo de puta. Why do I feel like I'm tripping?" She screamed before trying to dig her nails into my eyes. The time had arrived. I knew the cure. I put her neck into a vice-like hold in the crook of my right elbow and dunked her under the dark waters again. Her arms flailed about. She tried to kick, she writhed, but I held fast. I could hear her submerged cries, but they were muffled and accompanied by an upbubbling of exasperated air. Her writhing gradually slowed down until she managed a last, weak exhalation and final spasm, and then yielded her spirit to the Pacific Ocean. I left her body floating where I had drowned it. Even though no one had heard or seen what transpired, I was still tripping on the acid, and the walk back to Desmond's apartment building was haunted by bogeymen and illusionary images of people pointing fingers and whispering accusations. I climbed the stairs to the rooftop where my unhoused person's hovel was located, lit a cigarette, and was overcome by an urge to write a song. I took out my notebook and a pen and started scribbling. Moonless night, world's delight, me, you drowning, out of sight, we fear most. Give up the ghost, but before we do, let's make a toast on our tongues. Still feeling young, summon moon, and avoid the sun. We'll be scared, 'cause we've dared. Court Pluto, in Neptune's lair. I put the pen down, satisfied with the verses, and thought of the poor and beaten down, of the fact that we are all victims to the onslaught of implacable and incorrigible time. I thought of what could have been, and of what now would never be between Esme and me. After another cigarette, I laid on my rooftop sleeping bag, unable to forgive myself, despite my best intentions, for the simple thing, the merciful thing I'd done. Before I knew it, I had cried myself to a still and unrepentant slumber, the sleep of both the wolf and the lamb, of the innocently voracious and the imperfectly innocent. Killer ratings. The stealth drone hovered over the backyard of the suburban house, its camera zooming in close to its subject. A boy, kneeling on the lawn, in one hand a praying mantis, the other a pair of tweezers. Holding the insect close to his expressionless face, he slowly ripped the legs off the mantis. Then once that task was completed, immersed the body in a jar of water that lay on the grass in front of him until the insect stopped struggling and was still. A thin smile played across the boy's face. "Hey, Dave," Richie called out across the bustling studio of Hitchcock Media Enterprises. "Come take a look at this. Think we have a future winner here." Dave looked up from his editing station and walked over to the Richie's terminal, where the balding heavyset man was reviewing the drone footage. "Check this." Richie clicked the play button. "I reckon we got ourselves a classic Type C." Dave watched the replay and nodded. "Yep, definitely Type C. He will be moving on to small animals next, I bet." Dave grabbed a chair and sat down. "What backstory have you got on him so far?" Richie pulled up a file onto the terminal screen. "Let's see. We got a 14-year-old kid, only child, with single-parent mother. Never knew his father." He scrolled down. "Mother is a Christian fundamentalist. Breastfed the kid until he was 2 years old." Narrowed his eyes. "Oh, and get this. She would hop into the bath with him every night and sponge him clean up until he was 10 when he started getting erections." Dave barked a short laugh. "Jesus, where do these people come from?" He leant back in the chair. In the future, people would look back on this time as the era of surveillance, where nothing could be hidden unless you were the rich elite. Still, it made their job a hell of a lot easier, which was to make a shitload of money off human misery. Dave liked to think they were performing a necessary evil, like a safety valve on the pressure cooker that was modern society. That made what he did a little easier, and although he still might not sleep well at night, he did sleep in a large mansion in a secure community next to a cosmetically perfect wife. Richie was talking again. Dave focused his attention on the screen. "I've run the algorithms, and the AI is coming up with a 93% chance of activation by the age of 25. "Those are good odds," said Dave, rubbing his chin. "Put a flag on his file, and we'll check back in a few years." Dave stood up and clapped the other man on the shoulder. "The fans are gonna love this one. Richie, good job as always." Richie grinned. "Thanks, Chief." Dave returned to his desk, where he was currently editing the latest true crime documentary, to be released later that month. This one was a typical Type B case, a nurse who had been stealthily killing cancer patients by injecting air into their IV drips. A pretty mundane, angel of death scenario, but HME had gotten onto her pretty quick, so the broadcasting and publishing rights hadn't cost an arm and a leg. Dave didn't think ratings would be that great, but they had managed to get some decent footage from the hospital and the journal the nurse had written, so it would be worth syndicating to make a bit more profit. HME's documentaries were some of the highest rating reality shows on Downstream, and let's face it, that's all that existed on mass social media these days. But things had been a little lean of late, and they needed a big, high-profile case. Dave considered Richie's latest find. Type C cases were always male, of low to average intelligence, with suppressed trauma from childhood caused by a family member, and would exhibit acts of violence around the onset of adolescence. The victims were usually female and involved sexual violence or torture before death. "We need another Ted Bundy or Richard Ramirez," Dave thought. "They don't make them like they used to." Dave chuckled. Imagine if we could have got those guys to sign. We would be drowning in royalties. Still shaking his head in amusement, he wandered over to the publicity department. A tall, angular-looking woman, poring over some glossy printouts at her desk, looked up at his approach. "Hey, Dave. How can I help you?" "Hey, Jenny. Just wondering if Anthony is around." Jenny pursed her lips. "He was on sick leave, I think." She checked the screen in front of her. He was supposed to be back a few days ago, but I haven't seen him. Maybe he needed some more time off." "Ah, okay. I guess it's hard to find good help these days, eh?" Jenny laughed politely. Dave leaned against the desk. "Look, maybe you can help me. I'm trying to come up with a catchphrase for the latest doco, but I'm stumped." Jenny furrowed her brow in concentration. "That's the nurse one, right?" Dave nodded. And she was an elderly type as well." Her eyes lit up, and she clicked her fingers. "How about the matron of mercy?" Dave contemplated the idea. "You know, that's great." He gave Jenny a thumbs up. "It'll play well, considering all the victims were terminal patients anyway. Make for some nice, wholesome family viewing." Jenny gave an absent-minded smile as she returned to her work. Dave was just finishing off the credits for the nurse documentary when one of the interns came rushing over, flustered and red-faced. "Sir, I think we have something big," the young man said breathlessly. "Maybe even a possible Type A." Dave pointed. "Juan, isn't it?" He prided himself on knowing all the names of his staff, even down to the gophers. "Look, calm down. Take a seat and tell me what you've got." The intern sat down and held out a tablet. "We just received some info from one of our talent scouts out in San Francisco. Female, body count of 2, high likelihood of Type A." Dave glanced at the picture. Pretty blonde, with freckles and all, a real girl-next-door beauty. He felt a thrill of exhilaration run through him. A Type A was the rarest of the rare, a serial murderer who was charismatic, highly intelligent, and usually politically or ideologically motivated. They were also the most difficult ones to get to sign on the dotted line. "Okay, I'm gonna need more details here." Juan read from the screen in his hand. Gordon Calloway, the third CEO of the hedge fund Armada Londide, was found strangled to death in his penthouse suite at the Regency in LA 6 days ago. Our surveillance picked up this woman leaving the room soon after the time of death. Then she just seemed to disappear. The young man licked his lips. Then 2 days ago, a male body was found in a 4th-floor room of the Fairmont in San Francisco. His skin had been totally removed by a surgical device, most likely a scalpel. As a result, the deceased is yet to be identified. He paused and looked at Dave. The same woman was again detected by our surveillance leaving the scene. Dave raised his eyebrows. 2 different methods of killing. Now that was unusual, even for a Type A. This was getting better and better. "Now, you are going to love this," the intern smiled. "We have ID on the suspect. Her name is Samantha Bronte, 21 years old and currently studying a master's degree in criminology and comp science at New York University." Dave opened his mouth to speak, but Juan held up his hand. "And this is the clincher. Her parents were the last victims of one Simon Peters." Dave felt his jaw drop. Simon Peters, aka the Cuckold Strangler? His doco from 4 years ago was one of the highest rating of all time. Jesus Christ, this is insane. "Hey, Richie," he yelled out. "Get over here pronto." "What is it?" Richie asked, eyes gleaming. He could tell when something good was going on. "Simon Peters, give us a recap." Okay. So his MO was prowling the motor inns of West Florida, where he would stalk and choose his victims, always middle-class couples. Richie scratched his cheek thoughtfully. He would break into their room early in the morning, tie the couple up at gunpoint, rape and strangle the woman in front of her partner, then slit the guy's throat with a hunting knife. He did us a big favor as well by recording the last 2 murders with his phone. Richie looked down at his hands. Of course, we couldn't use such explicit footage for our feature, but somehow, he winked at Dave. Somehow the footage made its way to the dark web, and the notoriety of that boosted our ratings tenfold. Dave let out a breath. There must be some connection here, but that's not important right now. We need to track this Samantha down, and fast. Dave and Richie exchanged knowing looks. This is big, Dave said. Possibly the biggest thing we've ever seen. A notification pinged on Juan's tablet, and he gasped out loud. What is it? Dave queried sharply. The intern looked up. We have just detected the suspect arriving at North Vegas Airport, and from her credit card records, she has booked a room at the MGM Grande for tonight. Dave felt the hairs on his arms stand up. All right, I'm going to take care of this one personally. We can't afford to lose this. Gonna pack an overnight bag and take our private Gulfstream to Vegas ASAP. Should be there in under 2 hours. He pointed at Richie. Organize a car for me and alert everyone that it's all hands on deck. Richie nodded briskly. Will do. And good luck, Dave. Dave arrived at the MGM in the early evening, the desert sunset casting an eerie blood like haze across the dusty parking lot. The hotel lobby was relatively quiet, a few tourist groups checking in, and a scattering of people at the bar. He looked down at the picture on his phone and scanned the area. Nope, not here. Dave fought down a wave of frustration. Okay, gotta stay calm. He glanced at the bar. I'll grab a drink and wait. He ordered a beer, and the gorgeous raven-haired woman next to him gave him a tentative smile. He nodded briskly. Any other time I'd be interested, but it's all business right now, sweetie. He took his drink and sat down at a table, which commanded a view of the lobby entrance and the elevators leading to the suites. This was the crucial moment, the first contact. He found most of the time the killer was flattered, both by the money offered and the chance at infamous immortality. Their name remembered long after the victims had been forgotten. Most of the time. His phone started ringing. Hello? It was Richie. Dave, we got a problem. We've checked the hotel camera and there is no sign of our target, coming or going. Looks like we got scammed. Dave sighed bitterly. Damn it, well, she must be in Vegas somewhere. He looked out the entrance. It was dark now, with the first stars appearing in the velvet night. Look, I'm gonna stay here for a while. Keep your eyes and ears open, and let me know if anything develops. Roger that, Richie replied. Dave sighed again. Might as well get another beer. The dark-haired lady was still at the bar, a few whiskeys in by the looks of the glasses in front of her. She looked at him from under lowered eyelids. I was watching you. Looks like you've been stood up. Dave flashed a wry grin. Yeah, you could say that. A faint smile. Me too. I don't think my date is turning up. She gave him a sultry glance. Look, I have a room here and a bottle of sparkling on ice waiting for me. Want to come up and have a nightcap? Dave chuckled. Still got it. Sure, why not? Maybe we can salvage something out of this shitty situation. Her room was on the 12th floor, with an impressive view of the Strip. As she was closing the door behind them, Dave asked, Hey, I didn't catch your name? Oh, how rude of me. It's Samantha, she replied breathily, just as he felt a sharp pinprick, and then everything went black. He awoke groggily, unable to move. After a quick assessment, he realized that was because his hands and feet were restrained with zip ties, and he was lying on a bed with duct tape holding him down. "Awake now, my little Dave?" The woman was standing beside the bed, gently caressing his arm. He shivered with a frisson of fear. "You're Samantha Bronte?" he demanded with wide eyes. "And how do you know my name?" Samantha smiled sardonically. "Oh, I know everything about you." She sat down on the edge of the bed. "You fell into my trap like such a good little boy." "But how?" Dave stammered. "You'd be surprised at what you can do with a degree in computer science." She continued stroking him with her fingernails. "Especially when you have HME's login details from a loyal employee." She took something from the bedside table and plopped it onto his chest with a sickening squelch. "I don't think your buddy Anthony is going to be coming back to work anytime soon." He gazed at the reddish-colored object with growing horror. Holy shit, it was his skin. It was Anthony's skin. Samantha dug her nails into his arm viciously. Dave cried out in pain. "Do you know what it's like to lose your parents in the most hideous way, and then to have their violation watched again and again by your millions of depraved fans?" Dave gasped. "Look, honey, we don't make these killers. We just make them famous. If not us, then someone else would." "I'm not so sure." Samantha's voice dripped pure venom. "But you're going to find out, all of you, what a really dedicated serial killer can do." She took something from under the bed. "You and your puerile nicknames. It's only poetic justice to return the favor." "Do you recall one of your first documentaries?" Samantha stood up. "I believe it was called The Boston Bludgeoner." The rusty sledgehammer was the last thing Dave saw, robbing hookers. When the cab struck us, Mecca ricocheted off 7th Avenue South and died. Mecca was a stupid nickname for a first-generation Chinese guy from Queens. He always said that any woman would make the journey for his love. Even dead, he looked like a heart attack waiting to happen. Maybe he lost control of the motorcycle because of a heart attack. Overeaters should not be getaway drivers. A siren wailed. There's always a siren in the city. But Mecca was past that siren's help, and me, I didn't want it. I picked up the bag and limped toward the Bowery. Star. At home, I sat by an open window, swatting gnats and biting my tongue as rubbing alcohol seeped into the gashes on my knees. Garbage wafted in the breeze. Everything surrenders during summer in the city. It would be my luck to rob an in-call service, then die from an infection caused by a motorcycle wreck during the getaway. A small bag of clothes and the money sat by the door. I had planned to leave for Port Authority right away, but surrendered to the Chinatown futon instead. When I woke up, I opened another beer and wondered about the protocol for riding a bus cross-country drunk. What the fuck? It's not like it's first-class transportation, or like they'll ask me to drive. I can be drunk, I thought. But I definitely needed to shower because I'd kill anyone who sat next to me on a bus, smelling like I smelled. Jesus Christ. Heading west is always such a big deal. Seems like no one ever heads west without someone dying, I thought. I still think that. Mecca drove like a maniac the first night we met at a bar in the East Village. I needed someone to buy me drinks. He said he'd buy me dinner too. The bike flew toward the West Village like a shooting star that sizzled to its demise at an outdoor cafe full of hopefuls searching for a spark or some such fuckery. He slurped a lot of fettuccine. I sipped a lot of Chianti. You were a Soho boomer? I couldn't care less. Really, I couldn't. But he was buying, so I pretended to care. Yeah, a loft baby. My parents own a laundromat in Flushing, and they gave me money to invest in a .com, which went under. Then they gave me money to open a skate shop in the East Village. It's high roller. I ball. You skate? Fuck no, but I don't have to. I just have to make sure others do. What does your beautiful self do all day? Temperature. As a receptionist mostly. I cater sometimes. I studied art, painting and drawing. A few years ago, I was featured as part of a new artists show at a gallery. No one bought anything. Then 9/11ths, the gallery closed. Hey, maybe you can draw some designs for the shop. You sure you're not hungry? Eating kept me from getting sloppy drunk and forgetting. I raised my glass to not eating. He pointed his fork. Sauce splattered my nose. You need to paint and shit. Be an artist and shit. Let's make you one and shit. Star. A few months later, his shop closed. Temp jobs ceased. It was the second September 11th death toll. Mecca, a baller no more, depended on family money to survive while buying me groceries, carrying the bags up 6 flights while I rearranged cabinets to make room for all the things he liked to eat while hanging out at my place. You like these? God, oh God, I love the creamy center. Have one, he said, ripping open a plastic-wrapped cake with his teeth. I shook my head. Not eating meant not keeping up with time or when I last left the apartment. No work meant no reason to leave. After 97 years in New York City, the insurance office where I temped succumbed to 2 planes that didn't hit it. Catering dried up. I wondered if there was somewhere else and wondered how long until the rest of the country wondered if there was somewhere else. Everyone said it was all Bush's fault, but he didn't have enough sense for it to be all his fault. The world wanted to blow us up. Someone blow me up, I thought. I just wanted to disappear more than anything. I was so far behind on rent, I didn't think winning the lottery could pay it off. Mecca went to the bathroom. I opened the window. Outside, restaurant supply and lighting stores floundered alongside bars in the wild frontier remnants of Bowery bums and SROs. In the 1700s, the Bowery sprawled with green. Giant bugs swam through the marshland. Natives hunted. Europeans came to see what's what. Natives became red. Europeans became white. Everyone saw the colors of the faces instead of the colors of the land. The swamps dried up and the buildings built up. People died. People were born. They died. Bugs survived. I flicked one into the frontier. A little girl looked up and flipped me off. Mecca approached from behind, sniffing my hair. I moved to the futon. He got another cake. Hey, so, do you remember how I told you that sometimes I go to that place in Midtown? Well, I talked to the owner. She needs help and you need rent. Help at the poker game? Like serving drinks? Or dealing cards? Yeah, well, funny thing is, there's no poker. It's pussy. It's an in-call service. My laughter offended Mecca. It's not funny. Sorry. I never realized you were that lonely. He shrugged. It's not loneliness. It's convenience. You keep turning me down and you know a man like me has needs. Don't piss me off. I just bought you groceries and gave you money and didn't even ask you to jerk it or anything. Right. I should be thankful. It's in a big duplex-style apartment on the first floor of a gated brownstone. Very safe. She needs someone to book clients. You're a receptionist, so why not? Oh, yes, well, I moved here to be a receptionist, you know. Everyone knows artists need day jobs before hitting it big, and you'd only work a few shifts a week. The rest of your days are free to paint. The money's great. You can buy art supplies. All the girls tip the bookers. Some of the clients do, too. I do. Just meet the owner. So I did. Star. 2 days later, I met Tiffany's Diamond at a Mexican place in Hell's Kitchen. Her skin reminded me of an avocado. She spewed guacamole when she spoke, which was often. You know how it is. Us career women can't trust small-time bitches with the books, plus we gotta watch our men. Jesus, ain't it awful? How many times did one of my true loves spend my money, then turn around and tell me to fuck someone for more? Glad I run things now. I really did not have a reply for that, so sipped my beer, hoping a nod and a smile sufficed. Cops and politicians are some of my best clients. I have top-notch security, too. You'll be safe. Coming in as a phone girl shows initiative, and if you want, you can take some clients, too. You got a not-so-hard look that men like for the girlfriend requests. All my girls look like whores that have a side job as gladiators, though you and I both know a man will fuck this here burrito if nothing else is around, she said, bean juice dripping down her chin. Just keep it in mind. For now, I'll show you how to know who's a legit client and who's not. If you keep things classy, you know, keep the towels and soap stocked so the girls can wash their pussies, we'll get along just fine. She smiled, trying to use one of the tortilla chips as a toothpick, then ate it. That might be the moment I decided that I hated her. Tiffany's Diamond, a hooker without a heart of gold. Star. She used an intercom for clients, and they had to provide a password after buzzing the apartment. The work was okay for a while, but I kept wondering about that somewhere else. When I realized that she didn't use cameras, and she didn't plan on replacing the security guy she fired for eating her leftover guacamole, I decided to rob her. I knew where she kept the cash. I knew where she kept her guns and knives. I knew Mecca would help me because his first-generation parents were tired of his antics. They worked hard. None of us did. Star, Mecca, and I waited by the gate for someone to exit. Then we waited for someone else to come out of the building. We acted like we'd been looking for a key, then walked in, sliding ski masks over our heads as we approached the door. When one of the girls brought out the garbage, we forced our way in, shoving everyone into a bedroom. Tiffany's reached under the couch cushion for her gun. I knew the gun wasn't there because I moved all the weapons the last time I worked. Mecca shoved everyone into a bedroom and told them sit on the floor, heads down, while I emptied out the cash from the hiding spots. I had to keep an eye on Mecca too, because he was so nervous that he forgot to pack 2 helmets. The gun shook in his hand. We had agreed not to talk. Then he talked, and even worse, he said my name. Let's go, Lori. I knew Tiffany's heard him. As we ran out the door, she said, I will blow off their fucking heads. But we had her guns, and we were gone. Star. I never said anything to Mecca about saying my name. There was no time. I hoped he didn't know. I hoped he died a hero in his own mind. He thought he was helping me, and he died thinking I'd show him around California. And honestly, it was my day off. And I'm pretty short, so it's not like it would be that hard for even Tiffany's to figure out I was behind one of the ski masks. So there I sat, everything done poorly, planning a new life. The sunlight bouncing off an illegal cable hookup on a roof across the street got my attention. Soon, such second-rate sunsets would be a memory. I decided to shower. California, here I come, right back where I never started from. I sang to myself, painting on the beach, working in a bar. It could be good for me. Gonna do it right this time, I thought. The thought didn't last. A sharp whistle pierced the air. It sounded like a piano falling in a cartoon. I ran to the window. Traffic lights blinked. People screamed. On the sidewalk, a man and woman cowered. "What was that?" the woman said. "We should call 911, he replied. "I'm calling. Are you calling? My call's not going through. It's September 11th again. My phone works. Besides, it's August. Can't be September 11th. Then it's August 14th. August 14th is the new September 11th. An old man stumbled off a stoop. I got a weather radio. It's a power outage. Other cities got hit too. I'd rather go through 9/11 again. At least I didn't lose my window unit then. It's 900 degrees, and I gotta listen to you monkey fuckers. A woman walked toward the old man. You sick son of a bitch. My mother died in the first tower. Aw, I got a dead mother too. Typhoid fever epidemic of 1812. The arguing continued, but I had no time for it. I wished I could take a plane, but they would be backed up for hours now, and all the 9/11 security made them too risky anyway. A power outage meant no subway and a cab nightmare. Maybe I could hitch a ride to Port Authority and just wait for the buses to start rolling again. I had already robbed someone and watched Mecca die. Hitchhiking was the least of my worries. Still, I had left the guns with Mecca. Suddenly, my landline rang. Hello. I keep saying that cell phones are just a fad. Look, here I am calling you from a payphone during a blackout while everyone else is jamming up the towers. People act like those things are something, but mark my word, they'll be gone by 2007. There's nothing else you can do with them but listen to them fail during an emergency. Cigarette smoke never sounded so serious. That was odd to me, as that serious sound was coming from a woman who reminded me of an avocado. But I knew I was in trouble. Is it in a suitcase? Bus or train? I always wondered why you never got any new clothes with all the money I paid. Now I know it wasn't enough. You got greedy tastes. You're a fine one to talk. All the money you make, you still look like Jersey. Jersey's got rents and restaurants just like the city. Sometimes they're better than what you find here. Matter of fact, I just went out there to replace some hardware. The people I know in Jersey got great hardware. And now that my favorite Sopranos extra has driven back to the city with me, a blackout hits. Our hardware works great in a blackout, though. How did you get this number? The question should really be whether or not I shoot that old man who keeps screaming about his air conditioner before or after I shoot you. The phone went dead. Kneeling under the window, I scanned the street and saw Tiffany's standing by the payphone next to the bodega with her hair blowing like straw in the breeze. A guy who actually did look like an extra on The Sopranos got out of a black sedan. Tiffany's had the nerve to put out her cigarette, then chew on an ice cream cone as they crossed the Bowery to kill me. I grabbed a knife and stood to the right of the door, unlocking it slowly. I cracked it just enough to see what was what. For the first time in a long time, I felt hungry. It took a while, but heavy pants finally echoed up the stairs. Why do you always have to hire people that live in 6th floor walk-ups? The man said, leaning on the banister. Good God, I can't kill anyone until I catch my breath, Tiffany said. I flung open the door with the blade down and plunged the knife into the extra's back. He tumbled down the stairs. I turned and came face to face with that ice cream cone. Only then did I realize I needed 2 knives. Killing isn't as easy as it looks in the movies or even on the news. It requires planning to do it well. Tiffany's didn't even have her gun out, and she was dumb enough to warn me she was coming. But living as I live now, I know that the criminal mastermind is a thing of fiction. Most criminals suffer from egos, not masterminds. Crime or life just comes down to thinking you can take and eat and move on. I decided that I was ready to move on and find out about that somewhere else. I shoved her against the wall. White powder glistened on the edge of her nostril. The ice cream fell to the floor, which probably infuriated her more than anything. She growled. I growled, sinking my teeth into her nose. Her nails pierced my scalp. I pulled back and wrapped my hands around her neck, then squeezed until she died. Maybe I should say more after all these years, but that's how I think of it, because I can't think about it. I ran back into the apartment and grabbed the money and bag. I realized that I needed something to help carry them because of the blackout, so I grabbed my mini grocery cart. If I could roll a mini grocery cart from the Bowery to Port Authority, I could find that somewhere else. I told myself to put 1 foot forward. I didn't look at the extra when I passed him in the hallway. I just kept moving. Manhattan's easy to walk, I thought. The blackout won't last forever. I can disappear, I told myself, wiping sweat from my eyes. All I have to do is endure one hell of a bus ride with a few stops in between. Around 6th and 8th, a bodega owner stood in front of his bodega, passing out all sorts of goodies. He waved a can of beer and a sandwich at me. "Where are you going?" "I'm disappearing," I said. "How wonderful for you. Here, you have to take something. I can't run the register or anything. Just take it." Other bodega owners did the same thing, so when the buses started rolling again, I did ride drunk. I managed to disappear from everyone but myself. I have moved so many times, looking for some place. Wherever I go, I waft in with a look like a girlfriend and leave a stench like garbage. Found you. Grandma is dying, but she has lived a long and good life. At the age of 97, she was in remarkably good shape until a cancer diagnosis 3 months ago. She made it clear from the start that she didn't want to fight it. No chemo, no radiation, no surgeries. "Just keep me comfortable and let me die in my own home," was all she asked. My sister, Lori, and I were supposed to be taking turns staying with her in her house, but Lori works a lot. I am basically staying here full time. Fortunately, my job is a remote research position. Grandma was skeptical when I told her that I could work from home, or from her house, or wherever I happened to be. For her, a job is a place to go every day, not something you can do just by opening up your laptop. I set up a makeshift office at her dining room table. After working in silence for a few hours, I decide to check on Grandma. Sure enough, she is asleep in her room. I have noticed that she is sleeping more and has more episodes of confusion. Hospice comes by once a day to check her vitals, see if she needs more meds, and let us know how she is doing. I begin to think about my grandma's life, the life that is about to end. I need to think about that, about the obituary anyway. I begin making some notes. Born Annie Lee Morton in 1928 to Deborah and Leroy Morton, she grew up in Smith County. At the age of 16, she got a job at the snack counter of the old Songbird drugstore. It was there she met John Joseph Lane, or Jojo as everyone called him. They married in 1950 and welcomed a son in 1955. Mrs. Lane went on to move to Livingston. She began a job with the Renault Insurance Agency as a secretary in 1964, where she worked until her retirement in 2002. In her retirement, Mrs. Lane remained active with the local theater, as a library volunteer, and with local charities. Many in the community remember her warmly. She was preceded in death by her son, Jacob Lane, several years ago. She is survived by his daughters, Lori and Maddie Lane. I stare at the notes in front of me. I can't believe that is all there is. After 97 years, there should be more. I look out the window. The backyard is filled with dry brown leaves. My grandmother always kept everything so tidy, and the yard was no exception. Until the cancer, she raked those leaves herself. If she looks out her bedroom window, she will see how neglected the yard is, I think. I retrieve the rake from the backyard shed, and I think about the short obituary. The truth is that Grandma's life had one big black hole. It was the void left by her husband and my grandfather, John Joseph Lane, or Jojo as everyone called him. My dad died in a car accident when I was 9. I then developed a burning curiosity to find out everything about his life and his family. My mother had packed away most of my father's things. I looked through them and found them lacking in giving me any clue about who he really was. So, when I spent time with my grandma, I looked to her for information. I rummaged through my father's old room, and that was where I first found pictures of my dad's father, Jojo. Grandma always spoke highly of Jojo. He was a good father, a good husband. They were in love and happy. My dad, as a boy, had adored Jojo. What happened to him? I remembered asking Grandma. Did he die? She was in her 70s then, but had the face of a younger woman. Her smile faded away, and her eyes became serious. He left one day, she said. But where did he go? I pressed on. At the age of 9, I didn't understand the concept of separation, abandonment, or heartbreak. I don't know, honey. You see, he had lost his job, and we were struggling, she explained. Sometimes, I think he just, maybe went off somewhere and decided to disappear. I remember being shocked and horrified at the prospect. As a child, I didn't know that people could just vanish, except for kids who were stolen. But adults? Never were they supposed to disappear. After that, I never asked any more pointed questions about Jojo, but sometimes Grandma would make a remark that would give me a snippet of information. His favorite meal was meatloaf with mashed potatoes, peas, and yeast rolls. He was a good dancer. When my grandma was pregnant, Jojo knew it was going to be a boy. He was so excited to have a son. Then he left when my dad was 8 years old. It made no sense. I had asked my mom about the whole situation later on. She just shrugged. According to my dad, he fell asleep one night, and the next morning Jojo was gone. I think of this as I rake the leaves into piles. I start at the perimeter of the yard, and I am working my way to the center. I am out of shape, and am starting to sweat in spite of the cool temperature. One last drag of the rake across the ground, and I am going to go in and rest. I cannot believe my 97-year-old grandmother raked these leaves. My thoughts are interrupted when I realize that the rake is stuck on something. I can't seem to pull it toward me, so I lift it up, and that is when I see that the rake is tangled with a leather strap. Bending down, pushing the leaves and grass away, I realize that the strap is connected to something that is buried. I pull harder on the strap, and I feel something give way, but it is deep. Retrieving a small garden trowel from the shed, I dig until I can make out the top of a leather bag. After a few minutes of pulling and digging, I get the item out. It is an old leather purse, stiff, scratched and caked with mud. The clasp on top is an old clasp, the kind with 2 metal pieces that wrap around each other and make a snap sound when they are forced closed. It is rusty, but after some effort, I manage to pry the purse open. Looking down into the black plastic lining, I see that the purse is empty, except for a bundle wrapped in wax paper. The paper is brittle when I unfold it. Inside, I find a large brown stained envelope, and within it another smaller envelope. I open it to find even more wax paper, and finally a thick bundle of folded notebook paper tied with string. I untie the string and open the paper. It seems to be a letter of some kind. The first page has only one sentence. Dear Jojo, I am so sorry, is written in my grandma's precise cursive script. At that moment, I hear a car pull into the driveway in front of the house. The hospice aide is here. I feel panicked. I go into the house, stopping in the kitchen. For some reason, I feel as if no one should see me with these papers. I tuck everything underneath the kitchen sink before I open the front door to greet the hospice aide. Grandma wakes when we enter her bedroom. She is confused when she sees the aide put the blood pressure cuff around her upper arm. "What are you doing?" she snaps at the aide. The aide's name tag says Lavana. She smiles at my grandma. "I'm just checking on you, Miss Lane, just kicking the tires and looking under the hood." My grandma laughs. "I think my transmission is going," she says. We all laugh. "Maybe so, but your motor is still running, Grandma," I tell her. After Lavana has left, I put on the kettle and take some warm chamomile tea up to the bedroom, but Grandma has already gone back to sleep. It won't be long now, I think. I pull the papers out from under the sink. I look at that first page again. Dear Jojo, I am so sorry. I flip to the page to read on. My grandmother's handwriting was unmistakable. Date: Monday, November 25th, 1963. Jojo, you are gone. I know where you are, and I cannot tell anyone, and I cannot keep it in. So I will tell the pages. Only the pages will know. I will write this. I will bury it deep, deep in the ground, deep in me. Jojo lost his job 3 months ago. He was working for Wilhelm's Furniture. He had been there for years. But then the owner died and the place shut down, laid everyone off. At first, we weren't worried. But then, when Jojo started trying to find work, he couldn't. No one was hiring. Not the factories, not the stores. Then, we got behind on rent. The landlord said he would work with us, but then the gas bill went unpaid and got turned off. It was getting colder. I dressed in layers. I dressed our boy in layers. I scraped together meals of salt and pepper and butter and rice. Finally, we got into a fight. I told Jojo. He was no kind of man, no kind of father, that couldn't even feed his child, couldn't even keep him warm. Jojo, I will never forget your face when you left that night. I looked up for a moment. So there had been an argument, but that hardly explained the fact that Jojo was never seen or heard from again. I flipped to the third page, hoping to find answers. Grandma had written this page later. Date: Wednesday, November 26th, 1963. Jojo, you came back. You left, but you came back, and you had money. A big wad of cash. It looked funny. It was smeared with something, and then I realized that it was blood, and you were bleeding from your side, but you said it was nothing. You told me to hide the money, use a bit of it to buy food and pay the gas bill and rent, but hide the rest. Then you said you had to leave. Jojo, you said you were going to go to our cave, the one we used to go to when we were courting. You would be back in a few days. If anyone asked, I was to say that you were out of town, looking for work, and that you would be back, but you never came back. Within the handwritten pages was a newspaper clipping. It was about a robbery of a tavern 2 counties away. I read the clipping carefully, suspecting what it had to do with Jojo. The headline was big and bold in all capital letters. Robbery gone wrong. 1 dead, money missing. Officials are still trying to piece together what happened at Big Al's Tavern on the night of November 23rd, 1963. The tavern was reportedly not very busy, and the last customer who left at midnight reported seeing the owner, Al Harvey, cleaning the counter as he usually did at closing time. The next morning, Big Al would be dead on the floor of the tavern, and a trail of blood led out the door. Unfortunately, It was impossible to track further because of heavy rain during the night and early morning hours. Eyewitness accounts state that a man in a red-checked shirt was seen running into the woods behind the tavern. So Jojo, desperate to provide for his family, had committed a robbery. It was almost heroic, but I couldn't push away the grim thought that he had somehow killed a man in the process. Looking down into the bundle of paper, I see another newspaper clipping. Big Al put up a fight. Sheriff Ernest Glenn stated in an interview that officers have been able to figure out what probably happened during the robbery at Big Al's Tavern on the fateful night of November 23rd, just one day after the assassination of our president. While the nation was in mourning, someone entered Big Al's just after closing to rob the tavern. Big Al was no pushover, however, and had other plans for the perpetrator. From the amount of blood spilled, it looked as if the unknown assailant was stabbed deeply, at least once. Unfortunately, Big Al was injured during the struggle and died of a head injury sustained when fell and hit the wooden bar top on the way down. Sheriff Glenn made this statement: "Wherever the assailant is, he will be looking for a hospital. He is going to have to get patched up somewhere. We will find him. It doesn't matter if Al died from the fall. We will be looking at murder charges." The next page was dated Friday, December 6th, 1963. It was written in Grandma's handwriting. "Dear Jojo, I went to the cave. I know you told me to wait, but I went to the cave where we used to go, where we spent so many hours talking with each other, loving each other. I found you there, my darling. At first I was relieved to see you, sitting against the wall. Then I saw the blood that had poured out of you, your eyes unseeing, your skin marble cold, and there you were in front of me, and gone at the same time. I will tell no one. I love you, and I will tell no one what you did or where you are. Goodbye, my love." After that, she had written one more thing: $5,576. I guess that must have been how much Jojo had gotten from the robbery. I was stunned. It was all here, the solution to our family mystery. Jojo had committed a robbery to keep his family fed and warm. A fight between him and owner of the business ensued. Jojo was seriously injured. The other man was killed in the struggle. Jojo managed to make it home, give Grandma the money, and take refuge in a cave, where he died of his injuries. Upstairs, I hear my grandma stirring. I hide the papers underneath the couch cushion and run upstairs. She is out of bed and so confused. I need to get to work, she tells me. Where? I ask. She is impatient with me. The drugstore, silly. Who are you anyway? I'm your granddaughter, Maddie, I answer. She laughs. I don't have a granddaughter. I'm only 18. I realize that her mind is somewhere back in time, before the tragedy of Jojo. Do you have a boyfriend? I ask slyly. Grandma smiles again. His name is Jojo. He is so handsome. He takes me courting in the cave behind the old Myers farm sometimes. We can be alone there. Then the smile fades. Where am I? She asks. I tell her she is home and I help her back to the bed. That is the last time she speaks. Grandma dies the next night. I hide the letters at my own apartment and never tell anyone about them. It took me a few days looking through old property records to figure out where the old Myers farm had been. A mall sits there now, but it is long since closed and abandoned. The woods behind it are still intact. I waited for the weather to warm up and decided to hike out there. I found the cave. There was graffiti and a bit of trash near the entrance. Inside, it was dark and cool. It went deep into the side of the mountain. I had brought a long spool of fishing line, attached it to a tree outside, and unwound it as I walked deeper into the dark abyss. I didn't know how big it was, and I didn't want to lose my way. I moved my flashlight through the dark, and when I saw nothing, I kept walking. Then I noticed a shaft of sunlight coming through a crack in the rocks. I walked toward this light and found myself in a separate chamber. At first I thought it was empty too. Then I spotted the still human figure sitting propped against a large boulder. The bones of Jojo Lane still sit. He still wears the black cowboy boots, the blue jeans, and red-checked button-up shirt he put on one morning in November of 1963. The skull grins and a skeletal hand is reaching out toward me. I kneel and look at the empty eye sockets. "Found you," I say. Jojo doesn't reply. I sit with my grandfather for a while. The cave is still. The sunlight begins to fade. I reach over to hold the skeletal hand. I think long and hard what to do. Should I alert the police? Should I make an anonymous report? Should I tell my sister and my mom? Then I realize I don't have to decide today. He has been here for decades. A few more years won't hurt. I will leave him alone for now. As I rise from the floor of the cave, I can almost feel him looking at me. I turn around, half expecting him to animate, to tell me not to go yet. The skeleton still sits, expecting nothing, asking nothing. I tell Jojo goodbye and turn to follow my fishing line through the dark cave and back into the present, leaving Jojo to sit where the past had left him, the Breakfast Murder Club. A hush fell upon the gathering at the large clover-shaped mansion that Lucky the Lucky Charms leprechaun lived in. The guests looked in horror and sadness as they saw the body of the effusive leprechaun floating in the large clover-shaped pool that was located in the courtyard of the luxurious estate. Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, Count Chocula, Frankenberry, Buzz the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, and Snap, Crackle, and Pop all stood silently staring at the corpse. While their first impulse was to consider it an accidental death by drowning, something about the mangled nature of the body didn't add up. Casting even further doubt on the death by drowning theory was the large metal blade protruding from Lucky's back, with blood flowing freely out of the wound and into the pool water. After a long and agonizing silence, Buzz was the first to speak. "Looks like we got ourselves a serial killer on our hands," he giggled. "Buzz, that's not fucking funny," Crackle yelled at the floating bee. "We have to figure out who did this." "Can we make sure he's really dead?" Snap inquired. "I mean, we don't know for sure, do we?" "I don't think he's alive." Toucan Sam flew over the pool to examine the corpse from above. "He's not breathing." He flew back to his room and retrieved a large life preserver shaped like a red Fruit Loop, then tossed it into the pool next to Lucky. But there was no movement from the leprechaun. "Come on, Lucky." The body still did not stir. "He's dead," Tony lamented. "But who would want to kill Lucky?" Count Chocula asked. "Lucky didn't have an enemy in the world." "Well, that's not totally true." Pop shook his head. "I can think of a few people who would have wanted to do away with Lucky." "Like who?" Frankenberry asked as he retrieved a pool skimmer and attempted to push Lucky's body toward the side of the pool for retrieval. "Well, for starters, how about his children? Lucky had quite an estate and lots of estranged children thanks to his fondness for Irish hookers. Those kids always chasing him in the commercials? They were his own offspring. They were always after his lucky child support payments." "Yes, Lucky was loaded," Buzz blurted out. "He had it all. Cash, stocks and bonds, Bitcoin and doubloons, pots of gold, Swiss bank accounts, and real estate investment boons. But I didn't see any kids come into this house today, Sam interjected. Or anyone else, for that matter. He paused. Let's face it, one of us is the killer. The rest of the mascots stood silent for a moment. Finally, Snap ventured a comment. So, which one of us would have had a motive to kill Lucky? We were all his friends, his most trusted buddies. We've all been through thick and thin together. Whether we work for Kellogg's or General Mills, we've all had the same goal of selling the world's children onto delicious, sugary cereal, so they don't end up with that bland, nutritious oatmeal their parents want them to eat. How could any of us stoop to something like this? Well, there's one mascot here I think could have done this, Sam proposed. He pointed at the Frosted Flakes guru. Tony. He's had it in for the beloved leprechaun for a long time. Hey, I wouldn't kill anybody, Tony protested. Oh, you wouldn't. Frankenberry sneered at the large cartoon tiger. Like you didn't make your displeasure known about Lucky's Asian safaris that you claim are decimating your kind, especially with your criminal history. Remember all those game hunters they found outside your house? Those maulings were expunged from my record. Tony frantically tried to steer the accusations elsewhere. It was probably the toucan who did it. That's right, Buzz agreed. Remember, Sam, how you threatened Lucky on social media and you had to put out a public apology before Kellogg's would let you appear in commercials again? Sam leapt to his own defense. Well, he was nasty to me, too. He said that Fruit Loops were nothing more than gay Cheerios. He should have been kicked off of Twitter, too. He's guilty, Tony exclaimed as the other mascots took a harsh eye to the toucan. Tony, Pop yelled at the tiger. This isn't one of your stupid commercials. Why do you always talk like that? I had a stroke, Tony declared. This is a total witch hunt, Sam screamed. If I killed Lucky, you think I'd just leave his body in the pool for everyone to find? I'm a fucking bird. I could easily take him anywhere to dispose of the evidence. He looked around at his accusers. It was probably Chocula. Lucky had the goods on him, and the Count knew it. The crowd gasped, turning to the chocolatey vampire, who backed away slowly from all of them, except for his ward, Frankenberry. I don't know what you're talking about. I did not do anything. Lucky did not have anything on me. Oh yeah? Sam sneered at the Count. You knew that Lucky knew about your holdings in cocoa production companies operating in West Africa. Lucky knew that you were profiteering from child slave labor, using children to produce the chocolate used in your cereal. He was going to go to the papers about it, and he also knew about your little dalliances with European figures of royalty and your alleged ties to murderous East European strongmen like Vlad the Impaler and Ivan the Terrible. But what really made Lucky decide to come clean with everything he knew about you was a laptop he found in your castle, proving your involvement with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You, sir, have a long and very bloody history, and Lucky was about to blow it all up for the world to see. That is why you killed him. You seriously did all of that? Snap gaped at Chocula. You should take a good hard look in whatever it is you vampires use instead of a mirror. I did not kill Lucky, the Count vigorously declared. And all that stuff is also a lie. Lucky vanted to frame me because I was always his biggest competition for cereals with marshmallows shaped like weird crap in them. I think we need to examine where the three little elves stand with all this, Frankenberry said. Snap, crackle, and pop. Maybe one of you snapped, then another one of you cackled, and then the third of you popped. Okay, what's our motive? Pop asked belligerently. Lucky and us go back many years. Us little guys gotta stick together, you know? Like you never had it in for the little leprechaun who works for your rival company, Buzz buzzed. He always beat you in the little people's competitions at the breakfast conventions. Plus, his cereal always did better with children aged 6 to 18, especially in those from wealthier households. Snap sniffled. Yes, he was our whimsical little rival, but that doesn't mean any of us would kill him. If it was anybody here who did it, it was probably the pink monstrosity standing over there. Frankenberry frowned as the crowd turned in his direction. Me? Screw you, you little elf. I would never kill Lucky. Oh, yeah? Snap asserted. Like you never got into Lucky's face about all the rumors he spread about you, about the name of your cereal meaning it contained genetically modified berries. Frankenberry shook his head sadly. Yeah, I guess it did hit me below the belt when he told people that. My sales went down over 20% because of him. Also, Lucky did sleep with your wife, Chocula added. She said sex with me was like sleeping with a corpse, Frankenberry cried. Well, I can't help that. I'm made of corpses. The hell was she doing with that little Irish runt anyway? His pecker is probably the size of a matchstick. Whoa, I think we best move on, Sam suggested. Wait a minute, we never talked about Buzz. Our flying friend here had a very good motive to off our beloved leprechaun. Okay, I see where this is going, but I am not the killer, Buzz screamed. Yes, Lucky interfered with my efforts to spread awareness of the threat to honeybees. He'd go around saying horrible things about my people, that we're all dangerous, invasive species who sting people for fun. He kept showing everyone that damn Wu-Tang Clan video where the killer bees attack New York. He even tried to convince Michael Bay to produce an action or horror movie called Night of the Bumblebees, all because my cereal beats his among the 18 to 34 female demographic. That's not the only reason, Sam insisted. It's well known in the industry that Lucky also encouraged the worker bees in your hives to unionize. Apparently, work conditions at your company are so bad that many of your employees have jumped ship to work for Amazon and Walmart. I mean, God forbid you provide your employees with full dental. What the hell do my bees need dental for? Buzz countered. They don't even have teeth. Okay, enough, Crackle yelled. This isn't getting us anywhere. It's clear that almost all of us had a motive to kill Lucky, but obviously only one of us actually did it. We have to start looking for clues. We need to check any video surveillance of the pool, examine Lucky's wounds, get an autopsy done, anything that might clue us in on how and when he died, and who was with him when he expired. No sooner did he finish talking than all the lights went out. The courtyard area was suddenly shrouded in darkness, with none of the mascots being able to see anything, despite some of them normally having excellent night vision. Then, only moments later, the lights came back on as quickly as they turned off. Everyone shrieked in horror as they saw Crackle laying on the ground, covered in blood and not moving. Crackle! Snap screamed. Who did this to you? The killer has struck again, Tony exclaimed. We have to find out who did this, Toucan yelled. Everyone, follow my nose and stick together. Suddenly, a voice was heard from inside the house. Ahem, everyone. If you'll turn your attention to me, I think I know the solution to this perplexing mystery. The gathering turned their heads to see the newcomer, Captain Crunch, emerge from the mansion and into the pool yard. Captain! Pop cheered. What are you doing here? I came here earlier, saw what happened, and have been investigating the house ever since, the captain chuckled. I've become quite adept at sleuthing ever since my court-martial from the Navy forced me into early retirement. So, who was the killer? Frankenberry asked. And was it the same person who murdered Crackle just now? Crunch took a whiff from his pipe. Just calm down, and I will explain everything. First, here is an explanation of how it might have happened. How it might have happened. Tony did it, the captain announced, pointing at the shocked tiger in a fit of rage. Earlier today, he and Lucky were out by the poolside bar making chit-chat, and the conversation turned to health and nutrition. Tony repeatedly mocked the idea of marshmallows being considered a breakfast food, to which Lucky stated that marshmallows may not be a nutritious food, but that Tony was an endangered species and his mother was a whore. Tony immediately and swiftly murdered Lucky, inserted a knife into the body, and threw it into the pool to cover up the telltale slash wounds, and then bribed Buzz to kill the power using his stinger so that he could make an escape under cover of darkness. But when everyone gathered at the pool instead, Buzz had to sneak away in order to cut the electricity. Tony then took advantage of the darkness to kill Crackle, before the others could start searching, and find out it was him who performed the dastardly deeds. "How dare you! It wasn't me!" Tony exclaimed. "Captain," Buzz belted out, "maybe you should stop with your bullshit detective work and go back to manning those glory holes, or whatever else it is you did that got you kicked out of the Navy." Captain Crunch was undeterred. Those are the facts, I'm afraid. As ugly as they may be, we have a double murderer and an accomplice amongst us right now. "You both are going to jail for this," Snap cried in between shedding tears for his lost companion. "The hell I am," Tony snarled as he bore his fangs belligerently. "You real deed." He leapt up and pounced onto the ground, roaring and throwing his claws aggressively at the other mascots. "You don't want to mess with the eye of this tiger," Buzz declared as he pointed his stinger at the crowd and prepared to dive bomb into them. "'Cause believe me, you won't be a survivor." "Well, this is all a fun little romp," Captain Crunch announced just as the fracas was about to go into full drive. "But it isn't actually how it happened. How about this? How about this?" "Toucan Sam is the culprit," Captain Crunch proclaimed once the mascots were all at his attention again. Lucky was about to publish a memoir detailing Sam's troubled history as a cocaine addict. Sam was afraid the revelation would cause parents to boycott Fruit Loops and tank sales of his product. So he waited until Lucky was alone in the pool yard, then pecked him to death with that long, fruity beak of his. The rest of the mascots were shocked, but Sam did not attempt to deny the accusation. "Well, yes, Lucky did meet his end with me. But aren't you forgetting about your little part in this, oh Captain, my Captain?" When Captain Crunch did not respond, Sam was quick to continue. "When Captain Crunch arrived at the scene, I knew he would figure things out. So, I blackmailed him into covering up this crime by threatening to reveal to everyone his association with Jeffrey Epstein. So while we were all arguing back here, Crunch cut the power so that I could kill Crackle and take the heat off of myself for long enough to smuggle Lucky's body away from the house. But guess what, Captain? Our deal is off. You weren't supposed to reveal yourself in this manner, and now we're both fucked." "I too can. That is so," Captain Crunch proclaimed. "There is indeed a lesson in all this. Blackmail and hidden secrets are tempting to use, but are as dangerous to their wielders as they are to their targets. But do not despair, Toucan, for that is also not how it happened. Here is the real solution to this mystery." What really happened? "No one killed Lucky," the captain announced. "In the interval before his body was discovered by you all, I conducted a thorough examination. Though it may look like foul play, his death was actually caused by drowning as a result of acute alcohol poisoning. brought about by his ethnicity, as well as his despondency over losing yet another child paternity case, this time to a Brooklyn mother of 4. The rest of the serial mascots murmured. But then why was the body still in the pool, with the knife in his back, when we found him? Frankenberry asked. Suddenly Crackle rose to his feet, brushing himself off as he laughed. Thank the captain's cunning for that one. He cackled as Captain Crunch glared at him with eyes wide open. Crackle, what the hell, man? You totally stuck the knife in my back. Give it a rest, Cap. You did that yourself. Crackle started licking up the ketchup he had covered himself with as part of the ruse. After the autopsy, Captain Crunch put the knife in Lucky's back and threw it into the pool to make the scene look like murder, sullying the reputation of the other serial mascots enough to make people forget about his court-martial, which was hurting sales of Crunch Berries. I was in on the scheme as well, because he promised to help me convince the bigwigs at Kellogg's to bring back Rice Krispie Treats cereal, which we all know was the bomb. So I faked my death in order to make it look like a double homicide and allow Captain to declare himself a hero for solving the mystery. Plus, it would have allowed me to cash in on a very lucrative life insurance policy once I resurfaced under the brand name Rice Titties, the world's first pornographic cereal. Then why did you just blow it all right now? The captain seethed. You and I were gonna be rich beyond our wildest dreams. I had second thoughts lying down here just now. I realized that no one really wants boobs in their breakfast cereal. Crackle shrugged. So sue me. The rest of the mascots simply stood in silence for a moment. Captain Crunch decided to slip away quietly, to which no one else took notice. As the evening turned into full-on nighttime, they still stood in the pool yard without making a sound. Well, Buzz finally said, anyone want to go over to the Trix Rabbit's house? He texted me that he just made some brownies that are very much not for kids. Icedriver. Zen Mirai nudged the right flight stick on his control unit, and the 15-ton asteroid chunk beneath his feet stopped rotating. A tap on the throttle, and the longitudinal thrusters pulsed, sending him and his payload towards the cargo rail, the 200-meter-long metal tube with dozens of meteor chunks harnessed to it. They had already caught a batch of about 90 tons of ice, and this would be the last of their haul on this shift. Status check, said Daw Artego through the local shortwave. He was sitting safe on Gopher 7, the bullet-shaped rail runner that pulled the cargo rail, a tiny vessel, less a spaceship than a spaceboat. His voice sounded tinny in Zen's spacesuit. Even though Zen had done this 1,000 times, sweat beaded his brow. Any extravehicular activity was dangerous, especially driving a rock. You needed a feather touch and patience. He remembered years ago a rookie named Cassie who had neither. Tired and bored, she thrust a rock too hard and wasn't paying attention. It rammed another one and damaged the cargo rail. That was bad enough, but she was caught between them and turned to paste. Add to that the fact the company cut corners to save pennies. He was still stuck using stone-aged, manually operated driving pylons, for example. Every shift, Daw would park their rail runner at a spot the survey team highlighted. Then Zen would have to suit up and jet over to a good rock. Next, he had to drill holes in it to insert the dozen 4-meter-long pylons, and then calibrate their thrusters, all by hand. Basically, his job was strapping jet engines to asteroids and then flying those asteroids close enough to the cargo rail so that he could harness them to it. After that, he got to disassemble everything, but at least from there on, the rail runner would pull their cargo. Legally, drivers weren't even supposed to actually ride the rocks, but it was the best way to react when something was inevitably misaligned. endless room for error. Just bringing her in, Zen said. On top of all that, Zen was stressed because they were smuggling a platinum asteroid with the ice. He pushed the rock gently forward and fired reverse thrusters when it was in place. It was darker than the ice chunks, and if anyone looked up close, they would easily see it was a different kind of rock. But nobody did visual inspections. The economics just didn't work out, and so they'd gotten away with smuggling 12 of these right under their boss's nose. Here's to lucky 13 and an early retirement. It took Zen another 2 hours of work to harness the rock to the cargo rail, and another 2 to disassemble the driving pylons. All the while, he hoped this was the last time they had to do this. He pictured his wealthy future, well away from the frozen hellscape that is ice mining in the Canner asteroid belt, and he wondered if that future included Leah. He both did, and did not, want her there. By the time he passed through Gopher 7's airlock, he was trembling from fatigue. Daw floated towards him in the ship's zero-G atmosphere and handed him a celebration margarita. It was a rubber ball with a nipple, filled with cold water, fruit-flavored protein powder, and a dash of moonshine. "Any word from home?" asked Zen. "Nah," said Daw. "They quiet. Ain't confirmed the last 3 check-ins either." Check-ins were every 12 hours, so the ice hauler Coleridge, their ride, had been silent for nearly 2 days. Probably just interference from the belt. Daw's voice was confident, but he glanced to the side and frowned. The trip back to the Coleridge took them a day. All the while, comms remained quiet, and since Zen and Daw were at the end of a 2-week shift stuck with each other, they were fine being quiet too. They'd been driving a long time together, had learned each other's patterns, knew when to step up, when to step back. Friends were scarce in the belt. Zen decided he'd tell Leah. It was a risk, but they were good together, and he trusted her. Maybe he'd propose and make it official. He was so tired of this life, an endless cycle of brutal, dangerous work, and drugging himself stupid. Last time on leave, he went on a bender. He had vague memories of drunken partying with Eason, Leah's brother, memories of whoring and gambling, comforting memories of declaring he'd leave ice driving behind for good. And these declarations made the idea real, and uncomfortable memories that he might have let slip something about the platinum. But even if he did, nothing had come of it. And this was their last run. They were safe. They would make it. By the time they had visual contact with the Coleridge, a hemispherical head connected to a 6-kilometer-long tail, scores of asteroid rails protruding from it like the quills of a pine branch, they still hadn't heard anything on comms. "Maybe their comms are down," Dow said. "Maybe a rock hit something." It wasn't unheard of. The Canner Belt was relatively safe for a hostile work environment, but it did throw the occasional gift at you, and the Coleridge's point defense cannons weren't always positioned to slag it. "Maybe," Zen said, but he felt cold spread through his guts. The other 9 Gophers were already docked with their last rails, which meant the other 9 crews were already done their last shifts. Daw took them in, navigating to Gopher Bay 7. Normally they'd detach their rail and hook it to the Coleridge's tail, but since this was their last shift this run, there was no point. To stave off boredom and unease, Zen played around with the cameras, examining the massive Coleridge and her cargo. The field of dull space ice was worth a small fortune. Ice rocks were the main way of getting water on most of the stations in this system. Not that anyone outside the investors saw a real cut of the profit. Then Zen spotted something and frowned. "Check out camera 9. Daw complied. "What is that? We got guests?" An unfamiliar ship was docked with the Coleridge, sleek, narrow, and not broadcasting any ID. Zen swallowed. "Maybe," he said. They looked at each other. "You don't think," Daw said. He didn't have to finish the thought. Government auditors were their constant worry. They were rare this far out on the Canor belt, but an inspection based on a hot tip would explain the radio silence. "Nah, it's nothing," Zen said, faking confidence. Had he babbled to Eason about his platinum? Had someone overheard? Had someone tipped off the government about smugglers? "Maybe we should dump the cargo," Daw said. Zen turned to him. "What? How the hell will we explain that?" They couldn't run either. Gopher 7 depended on the Coleridge, and no doubt they'd been seen. It would be beyond suspicious if they tried to flee. Fine, Daw said. "We'll figure it out, or die trying." His response for pretty much any problem. "Worst case," Zen said, "we'll cut them in." Daw swallowed hard, and his lips drew tight, but he didn't say anything more and resumed docking. Nobody met them at the airlock, and they both let out breaths they didn't realize they were holding. No squad of Marines arresting them. No imperious auditor denouncing them for smuggling and treason, and 1,000 other things. Of course, things never actually looked like the movies, but the imagination did things when you were stressed. But they didn't see any of their crewmates either. "Nobody's responding on local comms," Daw said as they floated through the 0G corridors. "Think they got everyone rounded up? Doing individual interrogations?" "Interrogations?" Zen said. "This isn't some cheesy cop drama." "Yeah, well, maybe we should get our story straight anyway." Zen hesitated. He hated how much sense that made. "Yeah, fine." As they floated towards the command module, they began hashing out their story, each regretting they waited this long for the idea to occur to them. The unbelievable possibility that they were going to get caught was becoming more real with each heartbeat. When they came to a T-juncture in the corridor, they finally came upon some other people. 3 men floating towards them with purpose. Both groups of men startled and stopped, grabbing the railings that ran alongside each corridor to enable movement in 0G. When Zen saw the men were armed, he felt a jolt of panic. They were Marines, but then he saw their faces. 2 of them were vaguely familiar, people he'd seen somewhere once upon a time. The third, Eason? It was the only word he managed before the others raised their weapons and started shooting. A hail of pneumatic slivers tore into Daw, thrusting him backwards down the corridor and leaving trails of globular blood hanging in the air. He didn't even get a scream out as a sliver punctured his throat. Animal panic gripped Zen, and he pushed off Daw, flinging himself back the way he had come. "I got them!" Ison's voice shouted behind him. "Corridor 9B! 1 runner!" Not police then. Pirates. Zen grabbed the railings and propelled himself faster and faster, attaining a skull-cracking velocity. Behind him, he saw the 3 men spill into his corridor and fire. Ahead of him, he saw the juncture that would take him back to Gopher 7. When he neared the juncture, he grabbed the nearest railing with the aptitude only a career spacer developed, and he wrenched himself into it. He strangled a scream as something in his left shoulder tore. Not because he was hit by their fire, but because human shoulders just weren't designed for swinging a body at such speeds. His grip faltered, and he bounced down the corridor towards the airlock, rolling to avoid more injuries. Each bounce was a new bruise and a new opportunity to slow himself down and steer. He screamed out the voice command for the airlock to open. His pursuers were slower. By the time they rounded the corner and fired again, Zen sailed into the airlock. The razor slivers sliced through his right side and thigh, his blood blossoming in the air. He slammed the door shut before the next volley came. The pneumatic weapons were ideal for tearing through clothes and flesh, but were too weak to do any structural damage to ships, the perfect weapons for safely murdering in space. Their slivers bounced off the airlock door. Zen's right side was on fire, and his body and face were covered in his own blood, which was clouding in the air. "Come on, come on!" he shouted, starting the cycling process. Something thudded behind him, and he saw Isen's face through the airlock glass. He was snarling and banging on the door, probably saying something inane like, "Open the door." "Fat fucking chance," Zen muttered. When the airlock cycled and the door to the Gopher 7 opened, he floated through, holding his side. He hoped he wouldn't need stitches, but he feared he did. Either way, it would have to wait. It was just a matter of time for the pirates to breach the airlock. He floated into the pilot's seat, Dawes' seat, and shotgunned through undocking. Something shuddered, and he heard the deep wail of metal bending and breaking. He was licensed to fly, but as a backup for Daw, he rarely did, and probably forgot something. The checklists didn't cover fleeing from pirates anyway. Regardless, Gopher 7 didn't report any critical errors. Good enough. He lit up the thrusters and put some distance between himself and the Coleridge. But where would he go? He could outrun the Coleridge, and he had a head start on the other Gophers. But Isen's ship was a real starship, not a glorified cargo truck. He decided to dive into the canner belt itself, banking on Isen's pilot not being familiar with flying through rocks, banking on being familiar enough himself. Then an alarm trilled and his console flashed red. It was the friendly fire warning, in case the Coleridge ever accidentally aimed its point defense cannons at one of the Gophers. Only this time, it wasn't accidental. "Shit," Zen said. The whole ship rocked as the slugs tore through it, and he was knocked out when he hit his head. Zen's first thoughts were about making sure Daw was fine. Concussions were serious, and this wasn't just professional diligence. Daw was his friend. It took him a while to extricate himself from his seat, and by then he remembered that Daw wasn't there, that he saw Daw get murdered. Zen ran his hands over his face. "Shit," he whispered. Daw was dead. He felt cold inside, and he didn't really know why. This line of work claimed people all the time. A ship like the Coleridge might have upwards of 10 fatalities a year. But losing Daw was different. They'd been running this drive for nearly 11 years. They had a retirement plan. They'd leave this crap hole of a system, find a planet to live on. And now, poof, just like Cassie, they got careless, and the whole thing got flattened. And if the pirates were on the Coleridge and comms were down, the rest of the crew were probably dead too. Zen wondered if he really was the only one still alive. When he checked his right side, it was sticky with clotted blood. Stiff, sore, but he hadn't bled out. Lucky day. His hands hurt. His everything hurt. With trembling fingers, he tapped Gopher 7's cracked interface, trying to get an idea of what happened, of how much trouble he was in. He wasn't dead yet, and if there was a chance of making it out, he damn well was going to take it. Find a way to mourn the others properly. And maybe, just maybe, a spark of anger warmed his heart. Parts of the ship reported no atmosphere, so the hull was breached. The engine was gone, shredded by the cannons. The cargo rail was missing. He figured their asteroid haul had given him enough cover to avoid getting slagged entirely. Small mercy. He was stranded, but maybe he could do something unconventional with the maneuvering pylons, if any survived. and his radio still worked. That was good. But he was also deep in the Canner Belt, so it was unlikely anyone would be able to hear him. Floating through the belt and out the other side was about his only option. A couple weeks, if he was lucky and didn't collide with a rock. Then he could signal for help, and maybe in another couple of weeks, someone would pick him up. If he stretched his supplies, he had the food to survive that long. But the cannons had also clipped Gopher 7's water tanks, so all he had left was what was already in the pipes, maybe a day's worth. Zen sat back in his chair, groaned, and stared out at the Canor Belt all around him. An ocean of frozen water, as poisonous as the seas of old Earth if not purified. Not something Gopher 7 was equipped for, not something Zen was schooled in. Zen chuckled. We'll figure it out, or die trying. Just ask for mercy. It's a tricky section of the garden, shaded and north-facing, but the foliage thrives under my watchful eye. I ensure it grows lush and verdant, and only I can coax it from sulking in this hot, dry weather. I'm pleased to see the blue-green tones of Siboldiana flourishing beside the golden variegated undulate's leaves. I'm outraged by the pockmarked damage I've discovered, and search for the culprit amongst the ovate leaves. There, a snail clings to the underside of a leaf, sucked close in a non-consensual and greedy kiss. I prise it off, and the shell implodes in my pincer grip, crushed mush oozing between my fingertips. I discard the muck onto the soil with disdain, satisfied that feeder has now become food. A gardener must be brutal, constantly battling soft-bodied grubs, mandible-fanged pests, plagues of aphids and creeping insidious blight, all in order to protect the precious shoots and trembling new leaves. She must also have a hard, calculating heart to destroy what was previously nurtured, cutting back and curbing life when the time comes, sacrificing what was once so carefully created. I, the gardener, am like God. Through me, nature flows, giving vigor to the strong and enabling the weak and damaged to pass. Inside the house, the landline telephone clamors, taking 7 rings for Mrs. Nolan to stir from her armchair, doze and mobilize her arthritic joints to answer it. Crouched here beneath the open kitchen window, I am perfectly placed to eavesdrop what she says. Hello, this is Miriam. Oh, I'm as well as can be expected. And you? Yes, a very hot spell. The garden's very thirsty. Oh, really? You're too kind. Honestly, it's too much. It's an absolute honor. I can't quite take it all in. Trevor would have been so pleased, so very, very pleased. Thank you ever so much. It's all such a surprise. I certainly will, and you too. Cheerio. The telephone pings as it's replaced in its cradle, and I sense Mrs. Nolan shuffling along to the back door to find me. I muse over the emotional wobble I overheard in her voice. She's been prone to tears since Mr. Nolan's unfortunate accident, and numerous well-meaning villagers have phoned to offer comfort, but this call was a curious one, and I'm keen to be enlightened. Mercy, are you there? Right over here, Mrs. Nolan. I sound as sweet as maple syrup. Mrs. Nolan emerges from the side of the house, blinking in the bright sunshine, taking a moment to locate me by the shadowy border. I've had the most remarkable news, Mercy. The village committee have nominated me for the Best Blooming Garden Award. How kind of them. I'm sure it's Trevor's dahlias that persuaded the judges. He took such meticulous care of them. Trevor deserved the nomination, not me. He'd have been so proud, but it's too late. Both Mrs. Nolan and I glance involuntarily to the place on the lawn where Mr. Nolan was found. I am pleasantly surprised to notice how prolifically the daisies are growing. They're clearly thriving from minerals in Mr. Nolan's blood. Here we go. Mrs. Nolan's eyes are welling up, and her chin is wobbling. I stand, knit my eyebrows together with a show of concern, and gently usher her back indoors to put the kettle on. That's when I know there is no hope left for Mrs. Nolan. A well-meaning nomination, probably from sympathy votes, has exacerbated her misery and reduced her to convulsive weeping, proving any pleasure in life is now well beyond her grasp. What particularly irks me is that the dahlias were mostly attended to by myself, at least ever since Mr. Nolan's stroke last year, and I've exclusively cared for them since his recent demise. The dahlias, the roses, those blousy, vulgar petunias that Mrs. Nolan chose, and I obediently bedded in. The nomination is all thanks to me. The world has no place for the old and feeble. In this very garden, right under our noses, nature uses all manner of macabre means to ensure order is kept. Pincers, stingers, poisons, parasites that eat their host slowly from within. Although violent, these acts are essentially a great kindness. A kindness Mrs. Nolan now deserves. Star. I ponder my options. Whilst some impulsivity was involved with Mr. Nolan, this time I'll carefully consider my plan. Not to say last time wasn't efficient and effective. I'd taken great care that afternoon to prune the privet hedge to perfection. I was clearing away the cuttings, gloved as the sap can sting, whilst Mr. Nolan limped up and down, pedantically questioning some cross-branch irregularities he perceived in the shrubs. I pitied him, unable as he was to appreciate my work and no longer able to manage the shears himself with one useless arm. It was the least I could do to relieve him of his agitation once and for all. Stepping close, I plunged the points of the shears into his fleshy, cotton-shirted paunch, which gave little more resistance than a fish belly, and slid the blades upwards under his ribs. It was remarkably easy. This single moment of pain was all it took to free him from his frustrated, failing body. A poppy crimson stain blossomed under his spread fingers as he clutched his gut in a futile attempt to hold back the seeping blood. Before my eyes, his pallid face became slack-jawed with disbelief. He gurgled and spluttered, eyes bulging pleadingly, but there was nothing left to be said. As he staggered, I gently grasped him by the shoulders and guided him down to the ground face first, so the blade tips emerged through his back like fresh new shoots. It looked every bit the tragic accident, the clumsy fall of a foolish man carrying tools he couldn't handle when he should have left the work for the gardener. I removed the remaining cuttings under the pretense I'd left much earlier, and left him for Mrs. Nolan to find after she returned from the parish cake sale. Perhaps a similarly violent end for Mrs. Nolan would be fitting. I'm briefly excited by the thought of her pale wrists cut to scarlet ribbons by secateurs. Driven to suicide by grief, of course. I suspect the bleeding out could take some time, and given the neighbors' windows will be wide open in the summer heat, enabling them to hear her screams, maybe this is an unwise option. A fall on the patio? I think of Mrs. Nolan's head as the snail shell crushed between my fingers and wonder if one blow would be enough. Multiple blows would be inconsistent with a fall, raising suspicions that could compromise the innocent image I'm associated with throughout the village. I'm reluctant to take such risk. My eyes narrow thoughtfully as I scan the tapestry of summer-petaled foliage in the garden borders. Star Mrs. Nolan's made a Victoria sponge. She tells me it's to celebrate the Best Blooming Garden nomination, but I can see her tired old heart's not in it. Nevertheless, we're both playing along with her pointless charade while it lasts. "Do have a slice before you go," she urges me. "I'll wrap up an extra slice for you to take home." We're sat at her little kitchen table. I've taken Mr. Nolan's chair as I'm curious to see her reaction, but she doesn't comment. She's adored my company since he's been gone. Evidence of her lonely, pitiful existence. My heart swells to think that soon I'll have released her from her misery. "Won't you have any tea, Mercy?" She looks quizzically over the top of her cup at my untouched one. I'm enjoying the delicious cake, Mrs. Nolan. I'm certainly glowing with anticipation, not at the sickly slice on my plate, but to see beads of sweat break out on her forehead. Mrs. Nolan raises a hand, her heart, probably feeling some palpitations. "Mercy, you've been a rock over these last few weeks. I don't know how I would have coped without you," she tells me earnestly. A curious sensation passes through me, a brief flicker of guilt, possibly even doubt. After all, it's not too late, is it? I push the inconvenient emotions away, remembering my role as gardener requires ruthless management of the weak and sickly. And I wait. It's all happening fast now. Panic creeps into Mrs. Nolan's face as her heart begins to gallop like wild horses. She gasps, reaches out a hand towards me, but knocks my plate of cake onto the floor. Both smash into pieces on the tiles. Digitalis perurea, a cottage garden favorite commonly known as the foxglove, is an excellent pollinator, adding height and structure to summer borders. It's also highly toxic. The foxgloves I propagated have been glorious this year, in my opinion, outshining the dahlias by far. From the unripe green seeds, I've ground a paste and steeped it in the tea that Mrs. Nolan's poured from the pot. Her cup stands empty on the table, white and fluted like the trumpet of a foxglove flower. I watch closely, and am certain Mrs. Nolan experiences minimal pain as her racing heart outruns itself, my face disappearing from her view as her vision blurs and darkens. At her age, no one will suspect a thing. Star, the village shop door tinkles as I enter, and I wait patiently while Janet serves a child buying sweets from one of the large jars on the shelf. I smile indulgently at the youngster who glances uneasily at me and takes a wary, wide sidestep around me as he leaves. So strange that children often sense their vulnerability better than their adult counterparts. "Mercy, how are you bearing up?" Janet is the picture of kind concern. "Such a blow to hear about Miriam. I heard you were there when she took poorly." "It was terrible," I murmur, eyes downcast. She'd never truly recovered from finding Mr. Nolan in such a state. It was the shock, wasn't it? And a broken heart. Maybe it's all for the best. Janet shudders before her bright demeanor returns. "What can I help you with?" "Could I pop a note in the window, please?" "To let people know I'm available for work." With Janet's permission, I take out from my bag the card I've carefully written my number on and slide it into one of the plastic sleeves hanging in the shop window. It's placed alongside local business cards and adverts for piano tuition and babysitting. In my neat, orderly cursive, I've written my number and a friendly message. I'm confident there will be a good response, especially as the Best Blooming Garden Award is still up for grabs. Does your garden need some love and care? Call now for experienced help. Just ask for Mercy.